I don't know if you remember the movie The Matrix. And so in that movie, there's a moment where this guy named Neo is given a choice. Right? There's this kind of grand-looking guy named Morpheus. He's sitting there with his black suit and sunglasses, and he says, you can either choose the red pill or the blue pill. Right? One kind of lets him live in the fantasy that he's created, one that is supposed to reveal to him what actual truth is. But he says to him, you can choose, which one do you want? It's almost like this game of would you rather. I don't know if you've played that, right? Would you rather? Let's actually try this right now. I think this will work. Let's find out if this works. Yeah, okay. So here's what I want you to do. If you want to, I'm going to ask you, if you're going to vote for the red item, raise your right hand. If you're going to vote for the blue item, do the blue hand, okay? So let's try this. Would you rather have a burger or have a salad? Interesting. Okay, all right. Let's try this. Would you rather go to a party or read a book? Ooh, some people are like, All right, one more. Would you rather go to Europe for vacation or have a staycation? Interesting. It's interesting, right? Because when you look at what we've been looking at the last few weeks, really since February, in this book of Malachi, just to kind of recap a little bit about what's happening, of where Malachi is situated. So, really quick history lesson. You have a group of people called the Israelites who God has put together and said, I want you to help the nations to understand what does it mean to follow me. And so with that, though, is that as God is establishing this kingdom, there are many times when people turn away from God. Sometimes they turn back to God, then they turn away from God, back to God. And over and over again, there are these people reminding him, God sends these people called the prophets who are basically trying to remind them, if you keep on going away from God, this is the consequence of that. And eventually it happens. It gets to the point where the kingdom itself is divided, and eventually you have other nations who come and take them over and basically exile them off. Now, after 70 years of exile, some of them are allowed to return. And as they do, they begin to rebuild the wall. And they begin to rebuild the temple. Because there's this understanding that as they were rebuilding it, they were reestablishing God's kingdom. And so they believed that the Messiah was going to come, that the Messiah promised through all those different generations, all those centuries, would eventually come to reestablish his kingdom on earth, like we prayed earlier, his kingdom on earth as in heaven. But after several decades, after several generations, they were waiting, and after a while, things were starting to get hard. In fact, one person had this statement. He said, to the discouraged people of Malachi's day, these predictions that were written in the book of Malachi, these predictions must have seemed a cruel mockery. In contrast to the glowing promises, they faced economic difficulties due to drought and crop failure. And so there's this disconnect in reality, this sense of, okay, God, you're supposed to be, we're reestablishing the temple, we're reestablishing the city of Jerusalem, and yet, where are you? As Pastor David reminded us, over and over again, there was these questions of when God said this, and they came back and said, well, when did we do that? And this is back and forth, back and forth. And so, we come to the final chapter in Malachi. Because last week we had looked at this one question, right? We ended off with this question of, do you fear God? That was the question we were landing on. Do you fear God? And that fear is termed as awe and reverence. Okay? That was the question. Do you fear God? And so, in Malachi chapter 4, verse 1, let's read this together, shall we? On the count of three. Ready? 1, 2, 3. The Lord of heaven's armies says, the day of judgment is coming. Burning like a furnace. On that day, the arrogant and the wicked will be burned up like straw. They And so Malachi, in the final part of his prophecy here, he reminds them, he says, the day of judgment is coming. The day of judgment is coming like a fire. Now, fires do multiple things, right? Fires, at the end of the day, have this purification process in it. There are things that burn away, but there are things that remain. This fire that keeps on burning. The things that are not meant to stay are burned away, but that which is meant to remain stays. And so when Malachi says that the day of judgment is coming and this fire is coming, it's not just kind of this grand blaze. It has this very specific purpose, right? It's meant to purify, but simultaneously destroy. It's meant to make something. It's like when you take a metal and you put it in the fire, those parts of the metal that are not meant to be there will burn away, but those that make it pure will stay. And so there's a sense of fire is meant to purify, but then the fire is meant to destroy. The fire is meant to whatever is meant to remain there will stay there, but yet was not is meant to be taken away. That's what the day of judgment is meant to do. It's meant to strip away every part of us that it does not resonate with God. Every part of us that is somehow in conflict with God. All those things in us that seem to separate us from God, all those things that we do, all those things that we think, all those attitudes that we hold to ourselves that are contrary to who God is, that on the day of judgment will be revealed. And that which is meant to stay will stay and meant to purify, but that which is meant to burn away, in some cases, for some people who choose not to follow Jesus, will be separated. There will be this separation. And so on the one hand, you look at that, and I don't know about you, I'm not little campfires, that kind of thing, that's kind of nice. But personally, I am afraid of fire. I can't start a campfire. I am really bad at it. You can set it up perfectly, and I can't do it. That's just me, right? But fire is something that, when it's out of control, can feel very daunting, can feel very frightening. And yet, through that process, something miraculous can happen. Let's continue on to verse 2. Let's read this together, okay? Ready? On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3.
But for you who fear my name, the Son of Righteousness will arise with healing in his wings, and you will go free, leaping with joy like calves led out to pasture.
Okay. I want to hone in on one specific word here, all right? When you read that, it's a little bit hard. It might be a little bit hard to read, but under where it says raise, you see the word kanaf. Can you say that? Kanaf. Let's say that. Ready? Kanaf. Okay? So I'm not showing, this is just a transliteration of the Hebrew word. I'm not showing you actually Hebrew word. But the word kanaf here is translated in several ways. Wings is one, raise is one. And so this idea, this is part of Malachi's prophecy, is that the Son of Righteousness, and there's a play on words here, right? It's not just the sun as in like the sun in the sky, but it's also the Son as in the Messiah. The Son of Righteousness will come with healing in its wings and its rays. And you look at that and you're wondering, okay, well, what exactly is he alluding to here? Some of you who may be familiar with Jewish culture might have seen that especially the gentlemen will wear these prayer shawls, right? And on these prayer shawls, at the end of the shawl, you'll see these little, it's a little bit hard to see in this picture, but you see these kind of little knots, right? Each of those knots are meant to be a representation of each of the commandments, so that as they wear this prayer shawl, as they are praying, they would actually, the tactileness would remind them of the different commandments that God has given them. Now, the end of the shawl is also called kanaf. Okay? So it's not just like wings, like as in a bird's wings, but also, I mean, in some ways, the prayer shawl kind of looks like wings. But this idea was at the end of the robe, at the end of the prayer shawl, was also called the kanaf. And so there was this understanding when Malachi was saying the Son of Righteousness is coming with healing in his wings, not just in the future, but is coming now with healing in his wings. Now, there's one recording in Mark chapter 5. Let me just read this. So Jesus has gone out and he's healing. And in the middle of that healing, there's all these people who are crowding in on him. And as they're crowding on him, right, they're trying to get at him. They're trying to, they're trying to get a piece of him in a sense. And so they're all crowding around him because he's like healing all these people and they want that. This is in Mark chapter 5, verse 24. It says, Jesus went with him and all the people followed, crowding around him. A woman in the crowd had suffered for 12 years with constant bleeding. She had suffered a great deal from many doctors, and over the years she had spent everything she had to pay them. But she had gotten no better. In fact, she had gotten worse. She heard about Jesus, so she came up behind him through the crowd and touched his robes. Verse 28. For she thought to herself, if I can just touch his robe, I will be healed. Because over the centuries, she heard about from Malachi that the Son of Righteousness, the Messiah, would be the one who could bring healing in his kanaf. And after 12 years of hemorrhaging, 12 years of constant pain, of suffering, after trying to go through every method, she hears that Jesus is coming and is healing all these different people. And she is the one who says, if I can just touch his kanaf, could this be the Messiah? Is this the Messiah who is bringing healing in his wings? And in fact, keep on reading. It says in verse 29, immediately the bleeding stopped, and she could feel in her body that she had been healed of her terrible condition. Verse 30, Jesus realized at once that healing power had gone out from him. So he turned around the crowd and asked, who touched my robe? His disciples said to him, look at this crowd pressing up against you. How can you ask, who touched me? But he kept on looking around to see who had done it. Then the frightened woman, trembling at the realization of just what happened, came and fell to her knees in front of him and told him what she had done. And he said to her, daughter, your faith has made you well. Because she actually believed. She actually believed that the Messiah was here, that the Messiah who had healing in his wings and his kanaf was actually before. This was the one that Malachi had promised. And Jesus said, your faith has healed you. I don't know what you're facing right now. Whether it's a physical element or whether it's something that's more emotional or mental or psychological, whatever it is, maybe it's relational, but whatever it is, God says, the Son of Righteousness, if you just reach out and trust him, will bring healing in his kanaf. Let's keep going here. Verse 3 says this, on the day when I act, you will tread upon the wicked as if they were dust under your feet, says the Lord of heaven's armies. Because for those who don't follow Jesus, those who decide to trust in other things, those things will never remain forever. And if you put your trust in those things that do not remain forever, then you, this is not about annihilation or anything, but this is rather those things that you hold on to will, and what's left? It says, remember to obey the law of Moses, my servant, all the decrees and regulations that I gave him on Mount Sinai for Israel. And by extension, Jesus then says also, I have not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill the law. That if you follow me, you will actually fulfill what I intended all along. And I know some people, when they look at, what we call the Ten Commandments and all the 613 different commandments that God gives on Mount Sinai, sometimes we look at that and we're thinking, that's a lot of stuff, right? I mean, to follow all 613 just feels very daunting. And yet one of the things that we forget is that this was meant to be a love letter. Those commandments are not meant to be regulations that you follow to the T, like building standards and compliance agreements and all that kind of stuff. This was God's way of saying, I love you so much, I want you to actually see what it means to live with me. And the commandments were not meant to be this kind of do's and don'ts. It was meant to paint a picture. This is what life looks like with me. So Malachi challenges them. If you observe the laws, and by extension, if you trust Jesus, the one who fulfills the laws, because Jesus is the love letter to us. He says, if you trust me now, let me help you heal now. You don't have to wait till the day of judgment for all that healing to happen. You can actually have it now. Now, it might not happen the way you think you want it to happen, but that's why he says, will you trust me in this? Because at the end of the day, that's what the cross is meant to do. The cross was ultimately his sign of love to us. The Son of Righteousness who brings healing in his wings. Let's keep going here. Ready? Let's read this together on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3.
Look, I am sending you the prophet Elijah before the great and dreadful day of the Lord arrives.
So, Malachi is saying that someone like Elijah is going to come and will be the front runner, the forerunner of Jesus the Messiah. And so he's telling them this will be one sign, right? When you see that Elijah comes, this is what you need to pay attention to. Now, jump ahead a bit, and this is from, we'll come back to that. So, one of the things when the disciples are talking with Jesus, this is from Matthew chapter 17. This is 4 verses. We're going to read from 10 to 13. I'm going to ask if 4 volunteers would like to read 1 verse each. Feel free to. So this is verse 10. Anyone want to read that? Yes.
Then his disciples asked him, why do the teachers of religious law insist that Elijah must return before the Messiah comes?
Jesus replied, Elijah is indeed coming first to get everything ready.
But I tell you, Elijah has already come, but he wasn't recognized, and they choose to abuse him. And in the same way, they will also make the Son of Man suffer.
Then the disciples realized he was talking about John the Baptist.
Right. So John the Baptist, Jesus tells them, because they're asking, well, Malachi says that Elijah has to come first before the Messiah comes. And then basically Jesus is saying, by the way, John the Baptist is him. By the way, side note. Some of you might know that our son's name is Elijah. But his middle name is actually Ian, which, as I understand, is a Scottish version of John. So that's how that came about. Anyway, side tangent. Because that was what was happening. Because Jesus is saying that John the Baptist was Elijah, not in this kind of weird bodily, this kind of thing where, did Elijah come in someone else's body? No, not that kind of stuff. But John the Baptist was the Elijah that Malachi had prophesied. And because of that, Jesus is saying, because John the Baptist has already come, guess what? The Messiah is before you. And healing is available to you now. Because the Son of Righteousness comes with healing in his wings. Paul reminds us of this. This is Romans chapter 11, verse 22. Can I ask someone to read this, please?
Notice how God is both kind and severe. He is severe towards those who disobey, but kind to you if you continue to trust in his kindness. But if you stop trusting, you also will be cut off.
So Paul, who is someone who came to know Jesus later on in his life, Paul is someone who, as he has been discerning what this day of judgment means, that's what he's alluding to, is that this day of judgment that Malachi is talking about, this day of judgment that on one hand can look very fearful, right? That's what verse 6 just said to us a second ago. Verse 6 says that his preaching will turn the hearts, let me backtrack. Verse 5, I am sending to you the prophet Elijah before the great and dreadful day of the Lord. Why does it seem great and dreadful? Because on the one hand, those who trust him, it will be a great day because Jesus will actually be revealed in his full glory. But for those who don't trust Jesus, all of a sudden that glory reveals so much underneath there that you don't want to look at it. And I got to tell you, in my own life, there are certain parts of my life kind of like deep and hidden somewhere that I would not want anyone to see because it's bad. It is. It's one of those things. Have you ever thought about, if you put all the different thoughts that go through my mind and I threw them on screen, you'd probably look at it and going, oh, we hired this guy, right? But that's the thing. Because when the day of judgment comes, the day of judgment is meant to reveal. That fire is meant to actually reveal what is actually eternal, that's meant to be, that resonates with who God is, but what doesn't, and that's what gets revealed and will be judged upon. But the fact is, you don't have to wait till then to deal with it, because that's why the Son of Righteousness comes now with healing in his wings, so that you could actually be healed, so that when the day of judgment comes, that whatever that Jesus continues to work through you in, the way that the Holy Spirit continues to transform you, to sanctify you, to justify you, that's what will remain. So the question now is that, would you rather deal with it now, or do you want to deal with it later? Would you rather have Jesus, and again, when Jesus works this through your life, it's not going to be easy. There are times when it will be very painful. There are going to be times when it will take a lot of work with him, and it's going to feel like a struggle, and there are going to be times when it's going to feel like, why do I have to go through this? But the thing is that as you go through it, you begin to see the fruit of the Spirit. See, when Jesus says that, wherever your treasure is, that's where your heart is, he's not referring to this idea of, when he says, don't put your faith in things on earth, but in things in heaven. Well, what's valued in heaven? It's not gold and silver. What's valued in heaven is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness. And those are the things that God is continuing, he wants to help you transform through that. Or you can wait later until the day of judgment for all of it to be revealed. So, you don't have to answer this. You don't have to raise your hands on this one. But, would you rather be consumed on the day of judgment or be healed before the day of judgment? Would you rather continue hiding from him or let God restore you now? Would you rather face uncertainty of judgment or be transformed by Jesus? And not knowing where you are in your life right now, that's a question we need to face. Would you rather trust Jesus now to deal with it? Or would you rather wait? And who knows what might happen? I got to tell you, what's going to happen later, if you're not trusting Jesus, is not going to look pretty. But he doesn't leave us there. Because the Son of Righteousness comes with healing in his wings. And if you are willing to trust him and to reach out, then he will continue to transform you. Till the day, on the day of judgment, that you would actually not just survive, but you would thrive through the fire. Because what the Holy Spirit continues to build in you will be something that will be of eternity, that will last forever. It's my prayer that you will grasp onto that you will hold on to that you would rather deal with this now than wait to deal with it later. And for some of you, maybe you're not even sure what that means or how that looks like. You can talk to me after. You can talk to someone you trust later. What does it mean to actually trust Jesus? Help me understand that. And there's plenty of other people who are willing to help you walk through that. But this is something that you need to choose, though. God is not going to force this on you. Only you can choose this. The Son of healing, the Son of righteousness, comes with healing in his kanaf. And if only you would reach out and trust him, let him transform you. And so, Jesus, we thank you for this promise. We thank you that you are the one who doesn't leave us where we are. We thank you that you are the one who comes with healing in your wings. And help us, not just for one time, but for every time, to trust you with that, to reach out and to trust that you can heal as you intend. And so, God, we thank you for this challenge. We thank you for the words that your prophet Malachi has shared with us, has reminded us, has challenged us, has inspired us, and encouraged us. And may we step forward and trust with you now instead of later. And we thank you in your name, Jesus. Amen.